Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to plan and build a massive city within Minecraft. This could be on any server, any single player world, you name it. This will work wherever you want to build. So I'm going to do things a little different from what you would typically see on YouTube based on this topic. Typically, whenever you watch a video on how to build a city, you're either only seeing the finished product, you're watching a time lapse, or maybe you're only looking at wall placements everywhere that's just outlining the entire city before it's actually being built. I'm going to be giving examples on a city that's currently being built that's implementing the key steps and reasons that I'm going to be going over in this video. You could look at these examples and see what I mean by certain things I'm explaining. Also, just because this is a city that I've already shown in a past video, actually my very first Stoneworks Minecraft video is based on this area. So you can go back and watch that and see how drastic of a change this area has undergone. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into it. The very first thing to do when planning a city is to lay its foundation. Now, what all is included on the foundation? That could be your import and your export. Also, you need to decide what is that city's focus. Is it more focused on military, trade, farming, etc.? You need to think about the style. So is it going to be more of a medieval, Victorian? Is it going to be dark or a light themed? Or is it going to be heavily influenced by nature? And then once you have those two things, you also need to think about the location, such as the biome, the type of terrain that you're actually building on, as well as like if you want any type of water sources nearby, such as rivers or lakes. Once you have that foundation, now you can begin planning. The first thing that you need to plan are your primary buildings. These are the buildings that have an extreme importance that have to be built. Be sure that you list these buildings from most important to least important, because there are some times where you might not be able to fit all of the primary buildings that you're wanting. Once you have a list of those buildings, plan where they need to go. Just understand that when you're finding these locations, it's okay if you end up changing your mind on certain things. Just leave a marker in the very beginning, and as you build, those markers could be moved or maybe taken away entirely, or maybe you just think of a new primary building that you would like to add instead. When you're planning these primary buildings, you need to also plan your city districts. These districts need to have a certain divider in between them, such as a city wall, primary buildings, natural landscape, roads, whatever it might be. The districts need to have a primary focus themselves. So you could have a housing district, you could have an industrial district, a farming district, and so on. So first thing that you could see in this city, you have two massive buildings that are opposite sides from each other. These are obviously two primary buildings that we for sure wanted to have. And then we have our focus point right in between them. This is our focus point. It's a trade district. It's like a market square. So you can see how we basically formed this city around this focus point. And by using these two primary buildings, we're separating separate districts, such as that housing district and this housing district. The next thing they need to plan are the gatehouse locations. Just keep in mind, typical cities only have between 1 and 3 gatehouses. If you have multiple walls, obviously you're going to have more. But these gatehouses, they need to be very minimal, and that you need to understand that these are going to be the location of your primary roads that's going to start within your city. The last thing that you need to plan before starting your build phase is your focus point. Now, what do I mean by this? Your focus point is based off of that primary focus for what that entire city is going to be based on. So if I have a capital city, my focus point is going to be more centered around trade or a market square in general. If it's more focused on military or like a dark theme, maybe my focus point is a gallows. I don't know, it's up to you. Other focus areas could also be more focused on a primary building, such as a keep or a cathedral. Basically, a primary building being the center of a city with everything built around it. So the planning phase example that I have here, this is the very first planning that we did for this city. Now you could see that we listed 14 things, although not all of these primary buildings came into existence. So we have the keep, the university, the number 2, and the museum, number 14. Are basically kind of coming in together, but more in the focus of just a general library. The gate entrance was still there, the palace is fine, the Colosseum is still there. The dock kind of there. We didn't really make a dock out of anything, but we have a smaller one that's kind of there at the moment. We might make more out of it. The dock is there, the town square. Now, you're going to see here in a second, but the town square ends up changing later on in time. The number 8, the cathedral, never happened. Number 9, bathhouse, never happened. Number 10 and 11 actually ended up merging together, kind of where the number 10 is listed. The Cathedral 2, that's there. The amphitheater never happened. And like I said, number 14 and number 2 just kind of ended up merging together. So looking at this picture here, you can see where we're kind of planning certain districts for this city. Again, you can kind of see that town square that was initially made. It's also the same town square that you can see in my very first Stoneworks Minecraft video. It is very, very small compared to what it is now. But this was our very first plan for certain districts or the locations of primary buildings in general. Now looking at this third picture, this is our most recent plan, which is now starting to also be out of date, maybe only a few weeks later. But this is another plan basically for future districts. So we have color coordinated. We have a whole discussion that's going whenever this picture was taken. But you need to circle back and continue planning as you're expanding that city. Once you've gone through your planning phase, you can begin building. Technically, before you start building, you need to terraform your locations. Just be sure that you're doing these separate, one at a time. I don't want to terraform the entire city's area because, like I said in the beginning, things change, ideas come and go, and you don't want to overdo a very large area that might hinder future creativity. So an example on why you want to terraform specific areas while also not terraforming the entire location in the very beginning. This whole area was initially untouched. We were just going to leave the natural terrain and just kind of touch it up here and there. You can see in my very first Stoneworks video, but this landscape basically ended right about here with the arena, and it just kind of ended with the lake pretty much being right about here. And we're just going to go with it. We're just going to build a docks right around where I'm standing, and that was going to be it. Although coming back after a lot of this city was actually already made, we extended this entire area, terraformed it up a little bit, and extended our housing. And now we actually have a new method for a dock. In a way, it's still in work in progress. Like I said, it's a good example, but just be sure you don't get so far ahead on terraforming, but at the same time, only terraform specific areas, and don't be afraid to come back to an area that you had basically already made up your mind on, and don't be afraid to make those changes. The first things that you need to build are your primary buildings. Like I said, list them from most important to least important, and be sure that you are going to plan those areas before you build anything else. Once your primary buildings are created, you can go ahead and link them up to a main road. You should not have a primary building that is off of a main road. Just keep in mind that the entire city shouldn't be just primary buildings. These primary buildings need to be spread throughout the city with fillers and housing and other decorative pieces in between those structures. Also, do not get carried away with creating too many roads in the very beginning. If you're going to make your roads and base your city off of that road layout, you could hinder future creativity and limit yourself if other ideas were to come into mind. With the second build phase, the first thing you need to do is build the focus point. So this is going to be the trade center or the market square, like I said. This could be the gallows or the primary building. We kind of talked about it already, but this is where those are going to come into play. You also need to start building your fillers, such as your houses, shops, parks, decorations, etc. Fill those smaller spaces and bring life to the city. These fillers are what makes a city immersive. So really quick, talking about fillers, we can be walking around the city and you'll notice multiple fillers, such as that well that's right there. Just walking down here, every now and then you're going to have a custom tree or a cart that's next to that tree. You're going to find sitting areas, storage locations, whatever it might be. Fillers are what make the city immersive. Now this area right here, that's right next to this building, this primary building, this would be an example of an area that still needs a filler. We still need to link a road to this location and then find out what type of fillers that we can put around that road. Another example of a filler, this is right in the middle of our focus point. We didn't fill this entire place with market stalls. We created a little natural area right here, just like a little garden and a sitting area. More fillers, again, custom trees, you can never go wrong with those. We have another cart here, and actually we have a pond at the same time. So we have a pond, some more custom trees, and then a area for like hitching your horse to the stable, whatever it might be. But again, more open space for more fillers. This is still a work in progress, and this is still more space that we need to fill out. Also, this is a good opportunity to build smaller roads. So not every single road has to be a primary road. It's very good to have very small alleyways. A 1 or 2 block wide road should just link up multiple parts of other larger roads in between houses or primary structures. Just remember to stick to your theme and your focus. You want to be as creative as possible, but if you take it too far, you start losing track of what is the actual theme. Also, don't be afraid to try out different types of fillers. Depending on the type of city that you're building, you have a wide variety of fillers that you could create. So have fun with it, open up your creative world, practice building custom trees or ponds, rocks, anything at all. Practice makes perfect. And just throwing in another reminder, don't get carried away with roads. A lot of people build their city based off of a road layout. I highly suggest that you focus on the buildings first and then the roads. As for the last build phase, this is a good chance to go back and improve if necessary. Just be sure that you do not grow complacent. Just because you build something does not mean that you're finished with it. You can always go back and change it, maybe add to it, take something away from it. Don't always assume that you're finished with the build just because you've already moved on from it. During this phase, it's a really good idea to go back and build your interiors. If you're like me, you're really bad at interiors, so typically I build a very large amount of structures before I even do the interiors, but this is a good opportunity to break up the burnout. If I'm building for days and days and I'm starting to get tired of building or I'm running out of ideas, it's always good to switch it up a little bit. Go start some interiors, go start some fillers, maybe start on a different primary building and then come back. It's always a good idea to mix it up to avoid burnout. You don't have to finish a certain building before you can move on to the next one. During this phase, it's now a good chance to build your gatehouses and your city wall. We waited this long because we wanted to give ourselves a chance to build our city first, because maybe we overextended in a certain area that we didn't plan for, or vice versa. We didn't fill in a certain area, so now we can bring the wall or the gatehouse in. Always keep in mind that you don't have to have only one singular wall, and at the same time, not every single wall has to be huge and grand and epic. You could always have a primary wall and then maybe just a simple palisade, or even a wall half the size going around certain areas of the city. Once you have your gatehouse and that city wall, you need to think about your import and your export. For example, if my city is focused on exporting minerals or just stone in general, outside of my city, I can build a very large quarry. Or maybe my city is more focused on farming and my export is potatoes or wheat or carrots or anything. So outside of my city, I can fill up the entire land around the area with farmland. If my city is focused on exporting lumber or just wood in general, I can maybe set up a couple different sawmills and grow a huge forest around the city. Again, don't get lazy and don't lose patience. You don't have to finish a build just because you started it. Move on to different builds if you start getting burnt out. And just because you built something, it doesn't mean that you're finished with it. You can always go back and change it. Just some general notes for you guys. If you're building in a group, do not limit each other by forcing an idea or a design. Everybody thinks differently. Everyone has a certain idea of a particular build. If I were to say the word castle, I guarantee you each and every single one of you are thinking of something different right now. So do not limit your teammates. They might have a better idea than you. Give them that opportunity, give them a chance to help out and do what they want to do. Work together as a team though, so don't just let them run with it. You need to still give your own input. And just try to work to find a middle ground. It doesn't have to be one way or another. Take certain things that you like from someone else, take certain things that they like from yours, find something in the middle. Also, I already said this, but stick to the theme and be creative. It doesn't have to be bland. It doesn't have to all be the same building repeated over and over again. The more originality that the city has, the more immersive it feels. Also, if you're building in a group, utilize everyone's skills. Like I said, I am awful with interior. There might be someone who's really good at interior, but not building the actual structure itself. So maybe I can go in, build the building itself, move on to the next build, and then the next person comes in and fills up that interior. Same thing goes for larger buildings versus smaller buildings. I typically do well with larger buildings, whereas someone else might be really well for smaller housing or fillers in general. Like I said, burnout is going to become a very big issue. It's what usually keeps cities from being completed. Whenever you're building, don't be afraid to pause and move on to something else. Also, go back and forth from primary buildings and fillers or roads or city walls. You don't have to do everything all at once, but the best way to avoid burnout is to mix it up a little bit, do something different. If you're forcing yourself to finish a building when you don't want to, your build is not going to look as good as it could versus whenever you're in your best state of mind to be as creative as possible. Last thing, don't overextend. I said in the very beginning, don't terraform the entire city all at once. Don't create all of the roads at once. Focus on specific key areas. Finish an area before you move on to the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope that it helped you guys out. If you did enjoy the video, be sure you leave a like, comment down below if I might have missed something. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe. I'll be creating more guides based off of building and also Stoneworks Minecraft Server specific. But on top of that, I'm going to be continuing my history videos on the Stoneworks Minecraft Server. So again, thank you guys for watching. I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.